Guys, this guy right here, Max Aitken. I'm gonna do more biographies covering of folks you might not have heard of before. And Max Aitken is a fucking legend, and I will not understate that. He's Winston Churchill, like especially in the business world, he is a legend, and you probably don't know much of him. So yeah, I have two projects this year that I am going to put the emphasis on. One is covering these biographies. So I use the app Get Pocket. I read them in my bed, and sometimes I'm in my bed, like I'm like, oh my god, what is happening here? I mean, these are legends. The thing we don't know is that in the media industry, which Max Aitken was, by the way, um, you already have enough content to make billions and billions and billions. The data is there. The data, some of this data has been registered. It's just like sleeping, and Max Aitken data is some of that. By the way, Wikipedia is the way to go. 95% of what I read in bed is Wikipedia. The rest 5% is stuff that I've been sent on the podcast for guests that are coming up. I read about them, but I don't. I almost don't read books anymore. I listen to some Audible, but Wikipedia is where the gold is, especially if you're really advanced in your learning game and reading game. So, without further ado, I'll do more of those, and I'll also do physical interview here in Oaxaca, Mexico, and in other places in the world. I'll interview random people in the street, and you will see how much wisdom. Oh, there I am. Hi, Charles. You'll see how much wisdom there is in those people. Everyone has a story. Everyone has valuable data that you can learn from and connect from the heart. This guy connect from the heart a little bit, because he's a really tough man. This Max Aitken. So without further ado, I'll just introduce you to this beast of a man right there. So he just as a premise, he's called the Baron Beaverbrook. Beaverbrook. So he's a baron, right? He's like royalty. He's been promoted royalty because he did some really, really impressive stuff, which we will get into. And Beaverbrook, he had the choice between Mirimichi, Baron Mirimichi or something like that, which is a city in New Brunswick. Max is where my dad is from, New Brunswick. My dad's not a baron; he's still a legend. Love my dad, but this guy right there, and I will certainly tell my dad about him. Maybe he knows him. I don't think he does, but wow, man, what a life. Okay, this guy, so he's a media baron, a media mogul, okay, but he has done various things just like a bunch of media barons that uh, he didn't get there by magic. So let's cover this guy's biography. uh, I'm using the app getpocket.com. I just go in my archives and click on the stuff that I've read. So that's my process right now. I just read in bed. I'm like, holy shit, I need to cover this guy. I need to spread the news to the world. By the way, this is very beta, what you'll see today. Ideally, I'd have images in those video and I have a story, a biography. For now, we're going to start ghetto style. I'm gonna cover them by words right now. It's still gonna be entertaining, and my promise. How much time are we? We're 3 minutes in. It would take you 30 minutes to read this guy's bio. I'm gonna make it way shorter. I'm gonna make it more entertaining, audiovisual form. You can even listen to it. And let's go. So, okay, this guy, the first thing that is striking, so I highlight a bunch of things here with the Pocket app. He died at 85 in 64, right? So he lived a pretty long life. He was born in 1879. And that was quite uncommon right there. So the first insight, guys, is that billionaires, they live longer for one reason. And I'm going to back that reason up with like a clear example in his life. They live way longer because they have the cash, because they have the knowledge, because they have the power and the influence. Okay, that's the first insight. That's just one of the many reasons why you want to reach that level. Max was a millionaire by age 30. He was born and yeah, like just quick cover here, like just quick teasing here. He was Minister of Information, right? So we're also going to talk about propaganda. And like most of us Westerners, we think there weren't. any propaganda in the Western world, well, détrompez-vous, there was a lot of propaganda, especially during the war. The history is written by folks that win the war. Never forget that. This guy, yeah, he made it his job to make propaganda, to be a propaganda artist. He was really good at that. So he had the power over the world. He had huge power in those times, which surprises me why he wasn't covered as much. But let's get into his story. So he was born from a Scottish Presbyterian minister. So that's kind of a pastor slash preacher, and the daughter of a prosperous local farm and storekeeper. So lesson number two here. I mean, yeah, a lot of people talk about people not making the full use of their parents' money. For example, they're born to wealth. There's a way to educate your children. Okay. A lot of parents, if they put enough time and energy in their children and they give them the means and the education to leverage these means, aka money and their circle of influence, these children can make even more. And that's what happened right there. So a minister right there, pastor, so probably played with his mindset, plus education, plus they had money. And then, like the thing here, guys, doesn't mean that this guy was born into easiness. Okay, he went to work extremely early. He distributed journals. He like, yeah, he set up his cool newspaper. So I didn't highlight that part, but at the age of 13, and his newspaper was called The Leader. I was called the leader when I was young, in primary school. But yeah, this guy definitely, and I was class president, but I never had the audacity or the education or the ambition, quote unquote, to start my own newspaper. And that gives me a question right now. What am I doing right now in 29 that this guy was already doing at my age, And you'll see certainly just like next frigging level. So really, really a good example for me. He later sold insurance and collected debts. He worked for a short time at the law office of R.B. Bennett, a future Prime Minister of Canada. So that probably planted a seed in politics. And you will see this guy got big time into politics. All rich people do. Why? Because they maxed out finances and now they want to max out power. So keep that in mind. And power is finance, by the way, so it's kind of intrinsic. So if you are at one stage of wealth and you want to achieve the other, instead of just lobbying, you go straight up in politics, especially at this time when the world was still fragile and susceptible to people's influence. So yeah, that definitely planted a seed. The insurance and debt collecting, that's playing with finance right there. So it's selling air, it's selling safety and mental satisfaction, if you want. So the guy got in the right industries, right? That was in 1900, literally. So I mean, he got in the right niche quite early. Even nowadays, to me, insurance and debt is quite interesting as a business. So imagine at that time, and he was in New Brunswick. He got to Montreal at that time. Um, so smart guy, he picked his niche. He had the right mentors. Um, and he basically, I wanted to highlight that part because yeah, unsuccessful attempt at establishing a business. So he tried some niches, it didn't work out for him. So he went back to selling insurance because that's like a waterfall of money. Okay, so then he got like additional training in the business of finance. Business of finance, still the second most important leverage nowadays. The first one is software. Aitken, if he would be born in our time, he would be a software mogul. He would be a SaaS guru. He would be like alongside Elon, Larry, Sergey Bezos. He would leverage the strongest leverage, which is software, and the fact that software and AI self reproduces and so forth. That's where he would be. Because yeah, the three leverage, right? Third one being HR, human resources. That one is gone. And he was already into the second leverage, which I'm just getting at. In 2023, some people were really in advance of their time, and Aitken was definitely that. Um, which is why I'm saying that, yeah, if he would be still alive nowadays, he'd be like real deep into softwares. He engineered already at a successful uh, a number of successful business deal. I mean, mind that he was like 20-ish at this time, successful business deal, and was planning a series of bank mergers. So he was already in mergers in 1900. Imagine. He then bought and sold companies, invested in stocks and shares, so heavily leveraging again the second leverage, which is money, capital, finance. And what I wanted to highlight there is that even at this time, I've studied the Royal Bank of Canada (RBC), and they were already expanding internationally. Why? Most likely because in those countries there were so few laws, there were so few structure, and probably lots of corruption. Like, so you could get yourself like amazing deals for pennies, and you can get power and influence quite quickly. So that was probably an A/B test of his, of how to get power and how to rule a place. Some of my PhD political science friends could probably comment on that. Greg, that I interviewed last Thursday. But yeah, you already see international expansion. So the lesson here for those listening is think about international expansion early and go everywhere, A/B test, and see how business is done in other countries, because you can get mad leverage just from doing that. Founded the Montreal Engineering Company, and another humongous company. So that guy was making fucking moves, man, at the age of 25, 27. Um, he then, yeah, the Calgary Power Company Limited, now the Trans Alta Corporation, oversaw the building of Horseshoe Falls Hydro Station. So that got my brain thinking, because building a hydro station, guys, is like millions and millions and millions. But that guy was smart, and he probably thought, I'm not even sure if he thought in terms of 5 or 10 or 15 years. I think that at that time he probably pulled it out so that the hydro station would literally be almost instantly profitable from a financial perspective. uh, or he hired very cheap labor, for example, which moguls did back in these days. And he did calculus. Okay, the Calgary population, everyone's going to consume electricity. While at this time, electricity wasn't a prominent thing. So he did the calculus and he was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to literally build an electric dam. And obviously, I think he knew that this was long term and that he couldn't lose his money. Plus, obviously, there was some risk. And just what a businessman, just like elite cream of the crop businessman. Um, he had a closed monopoly after some time of running that business. So like this is just funny, because at this time, I mean, Aitken has a 2023 brain, or probably a 2050 or 2075 type of IQ. He's like way before his time. And you'll often hear me say nowadays, oh, there's no such thing as monopoly, because we're a bunch of humans. Information is almost like instantly transistable throughout the world. But in his time, I mean, this guy, he's so advanced that I do believe that, yeah, it wouldn't be fair to just like play against him. Plus, he was starting to get like a very good network of other moguls with him at this time. But I mean, and if you check all the very successful folks in his time, they're trying to get a monopoly. If you read Zero to One from Peter Thiel, one of his main rules or premise or thesis there is to get a monopoly. Who is accused of price gouging and poor management. Well, poor management's probably because he mistreated his resources, not because he wasn't a good businessman. But yeah, you'll see that this is a team throughout his life. This guy is like mad testosterone. So yeah, he got into trouble uh, quite often, because he was playing just at another level and was probably using his crowd under his advantage. So he got into trouble. That's a political part I decided to skip. He in 1910 decided to acquire some parts of Charles Rolls, yeah, one of the son of the Rolls Royce company, one of the shareholder that yeah, had a lot of share. So much so that, yeah, like Claude Johnson, which was another guy at Rolls Royce, was afraid that he would take over the company, and he constantly fought him. And that's another team you don't want to play against. Aitken, when it comes to having the power over a company, that guy is just a beast. He will fight to get majority of your business and get the control. Um, And which is interesting, finance at this time was kind of this very early invention. Finance was a lot about trust, and yeah, it just shows that this guy was making the move. And yeah, he knew that there was probably a court to bring to justice folks at the or yeah, this time it was like almost no rules, like you could, I mean, if someone wasn't respecting what you were doing, I mean, he had the connections to really hurt them, physically or like financially or mentally. He was also like operating in secrecy. This guy so secretly invested 25K to Daily Express. You see, was pulling some strings there, which is common also in these very rich finance folks. He sold his some of his share to of Rolls Royce to James Buchanan Duke, which is another mogul right there. He actually made friends with him, and I wanted to highlight that because he was already building his very powerful network at that time. Then the war broke out, and guess what? People in power, when wars break out, uh, they are heavily intervening, and you will see that like the Ukraine war nowadays. uh, Let me tell you that billionaires are invested in that, which is, I mean, they do it so that the equilibrium can be held, but power corrupts, and errors are being made, and sometimes they profit from this war. Obviously they make educated bet, it's like I have no chances of, or very few chances of losing my money on that bet. Let me make it. And yeah, they can benefit so much from the influences and the outcome of a war. A war is really a gold mine if you play your bets right. So yeah, that guy got into the first betting on the First World War. Um, I thought it cool though that he started recording what happened on the Western Front. So he hired a bunch of photographers, filmers to document what was happening there. So um, what was his intention? Is that guy pure Machiavellian? Probably not. In the end, he also had a heart, because some of the stuff you're gonna see later before. But yeah, he wanted to document that. Probably also like it's not rocket science to actually get some data and make even better bets. There's always like a financial motives. And at that time, there weren't no cell phones, there weren't no computers. There were people on the ground that could take pictures, that could film. So he was using the latest technology to get the data to kind of hedge his bet, and also have a social aspect to that, to share this data with the rest of the world, and probably gain even more influence by sharing these pictures and producing even more propaganda. So social, 5%. His own gains 95%, I guess. But what happens, guys, also like most of the time when you're very self-driven and so forth, you also, when you make way for the rest of the pack, you also make a hold, and you make it easier for them, right? So that's like a natural effect. It's not always applicable, because some will say that, oh, billionaires, they consume way more than they take. But there's always a part in which, yeah, they're kind of forging the path for the rest of the crew. He then forced the guy out of office, quite literally. Asquith, I think, yeah, he was a UK prime minister right there, and literally forced him out of office through propaganda. um, this guy right there, just, like he plays rough. You don't want him as an opponent. In return, he got promoted to an actual governmental position, and he gained a title, which is really funny. So he literally boxed someone out of office, and was granted a royal title, Baron Beaverbrook, as a result. And so yeah, I started the video saying Miramichi, that he would be named, but in the end, Beaverbrook, so that sounds more Canadian. Um, he started doing even more propaganda when he was promoted, so he kind of got lots of resistance as a result, right? So a bunch of his team resigned en masse, saying that, yeah, they literally quit, and just got re-employed by another department of the government. That's weird, right? So they all left, they all quit his department and got rehired from another department. So I guess like at this time he was like losing the war there, and he was like, oh man, this is not worth it. He became increasingly frustrated with his limited role and influence. So that point right there, guys, even if you're billionaire, doesn't mean you'll win all the time. In a democracy, it's if people go against you, they will crush you, however powerful you are. And yeah, he kind of learned that the hard way. An interesting point here that I certainly highlighted there. I started the video that way. Rich people, they live longer, right? Why? Because they have access to medicine and the best data. So okay, read that, and that's one of my favorite part there. So he had a tooth become infected with actinomycosis, often a fatal disease that progressed into his throat. His English doctor were not able to discover the cure, and he had to hire a Portuguese medic who cured him by administering iodine solution. Okay, so read that. And yeah, he literally cured the disease. So when was that, guys? In 1918. He died in around 40. So just because of that, he could live 40 plus years in his life. So how powerful is that? And if you read the book of Tony Robbins, um, Life Force, I think it's called, he often speaks about like getting access to new treatments, new doctors, new information. A lot of people, guys, sadly in this world, they die because they just don't have access to the right doctors, the right information. And even worse, their doctor are telling them, look, dude, you have 5% of surviving. Fuck you, like in an ideal world, and even in this world, there is a cure to my disease. In an ideal world, no one would ever die from any disease or could be reanimated. Everything is possible in this world, so if someone diagnosed me with a terminal disease one day, I'm just going to do my best to really find a cure. So that is quite the lesson right there. I'd convert myself into a doctor. With the time and energy, anything is possible, and with wealth and power. So the press baron part, like I told you, he got like very powerful very quick with his secret investment in the Daily Express, which was going really bad at the time. So I'm guessing he got to acquire most of it for pennies. Pennies for him being 25K, which is probably worth 25 million or something like that in our modern times. Maybe not as much, maybe like 10, 15. Um, he hired first-rate writers, so that's like an important lessons here, and cartoonists. Just hire the best. I hear that often. I'm still like not that much applying that advice, but yeah, good advice for me. um, so he launched the Sunday Express, and established a significant readership. uh, and yeah, so his newspaper was picking up a lot of traction. 13 million newspapers, so that is quite a lot. Back in these days, how much humans were there on planet Earth? Probably 10. Um, so he that I highlighted because it's also interesting. He purchased like a property to just chill and have fun and relax because he was always like too much in the epicenter of noise. So I guess he took a step back, literally, there to think, to have friends for long trips and get to know people, and even mingle and plan and strategize with the best, including Churchill, and all these guys that I uh, saved in my pocket to study. So that was a cool move. It's like masterminding from a distance and planning and nurturing relationships so that they could become really profitable for him. He also kept a blacklist of a notable public figure that could not be advertised in his newspaper. So that's quite funny, because they said things, because they did things to him. So that's what power kind of allows you to do. He's like this little child, also, that's what you can note. Um, Second World War. Okay, so he made through the Second World War. He was good friends with Winston Churchill, obviously, and he was promoted to Minister of Aircraft Production. A bunch of people said that, yeah, without this guy, I mean, Winston wouldn't have won as quite as good, because he contributed to the manufacturing of a bunch of plane. Um, it will be one on the assembly line. That was a quote. And yeah, that guy was the guy in charge of production. He resigned, because obviously this guy, he's just like an energy bomb, and clashes with pretty much everyone, and was probably telling bureaucrats what to do, because he's a businessman. He knows what the fuck to do, and some people were just blocking his path. And I see that quite often, and mean, when you promote these guys and you put them in the right position, billionaires or very influential people, they can be so powerful, even if they're self-driven. That's the point here. So I'm probably even alive because of this guy in a good part, so this guy, he literally changed history. All right, so later life, so I think that's about it, and if that's not impressive for you, well, I don't know what will be. Go read the full Wikipedia. It's just worth it. I'm trying to do my best here. Probably not did not do the best job, but just a couple of lessons to close that video back because it's about to hit 30 minutes. And not sure if I will accomplish my initial promise. But I've seen a team also with these billionaires. Their sons were in the army, because they really disciplined their sons and they wanted the best version of themselves. So they ended up in the army, maybe because of too much discipline, not enough IQ, or maybe they just thought that that was the best way to serve a country. He was rarely a faithful husband, which is quite bad, and was often accused of treating women poorly. But that is also like the he's probably a product of his time, because that was probably the trend back in these days. Tells a lot about him as well. Not the best human being, but did accomplish a lot of stuff. Um, I want to finish with like two quotes, which are quite marking. If so, that's what his friends were saying of him when he died. If ever Max ever gets to heaven, he won't last long. He will be chucked out for trying to pull off a merger between heaven and hell after having secured a controlling interest in key subsidiary company in both places, of course. Oh my god, this is so fucking funny. um Man, and must have been a funny guy to hang out with, this guy. And as you can see him, on these pictures, a lot of these pictures are, let me see here, so that's not the right place. Anyway, yeah, I saw a bunch of pictures of him on, okay, that's him, um on wiki. And yeah, it's like there's like propaganda pictures, like very serious, but he's a smiley dude, like on this one he looks kind of Hitler. um but yeah, and Churchill was like that character, right? Like it must have been quite fun to hang out with this guy and Churchill, and just get to know them. Another quote that I wanted to finish up this video with: "There are countries so underdeveloped today that the gift of independence is like the gift of a razor to a child." That was his quote, and that is somewhat true. Like when you give technology to people that do not know how to use it, money is technology. They will use it to amplify the crap that they're doing, and they will do more crap. Um, so yeah, the education needs to come with whatever technology you give, including money. New Brunswick paid. New Brunswick made a statute of him, and the children throughout the province paid for it. He paid for a bunch of things in New Brunswick, by the way, the universities and so forth. So that is my man Max Aitken. What an interesting bio. I was just reading that in my bed. I'll have more of those. Um, yeah, I definitely have a couple of characters in my bag here that I want to present to you. I'll make better versions also of these videos, like less boring than just text in my face. Working and thinking on that, but hope that was sufficiently entertaining and educating for you.